Well, Father Dave Dwyer is familiar to Catholic TV viewers from his work at Busted Halo and co-hosting role on Conversations with Cardinal Dolan, seen here on Catholic TV. He joins us today to talk about his new book. Thanks so much for being with us, Father Dwyer.
Kevin, thank you for having me. Bishop Reed, it's great to see you again.
Always great.
Now, as I mentioned, you've done radio, TV, podcasts. You've done so much more. What made you to decide to write this book too?
Well, you guys just started the top of your show with a few burning questions that had come into you about things, about church, about candles and whatnot. And I have a recommendation. You've been doing this show for a while. You know, just throw them into a book. It's great. This is actually what these are. These are questions that have come in to our radio show that I've been hosting now in a couple of weeks, Bishop Reed. It'll be 16 years I've been hosting that radio show on Sirius XM Radio, the Busted Halo show. And people call us all the time. Wednesdays, at the very beginning, we started on Wednesdays, we would specifically take questions about the Mass. And so Mass Class Wednesday now made its way into print form. I'll have to say, when I looked at my words after they transcribed them over all those years, I had to do a little cleaning up.
Well, you are the answer man, and I can't help but think there's a connection here with the Eucharistic, 3-year Eucharistic push that we're having here in the United States. I'm guessing there is, the timing.
The Eucharistic revival. Push, I like.
I make up my own words.
Yeah, you do. You're a bishop. That's okay.
To be honest, I couldn't remember the word revival. It wasn't there.
The goal, of course, is to not only reach out to those that are not participating in Mass, or maybe, as surveys tell us, people have not the same belief and devotion to the Eucharist, but to enkindle a brighter flame in all of us. That's why a 3-year revival is starting. Like phase 1 is people like bishops and priests and folks that work in parishes and dioceses, to begin with people that clearly believe in the Eucharist, but so that our faith may be deepened and our devotion may be inflamed, so that we can spread it to others. That's the idea.
Gotcha.
And people who've heard you on Busted Halo and seen you here in this interview as well know that you bring a large dose of energy and joy to what you do. Was it a challenge to bring that to the written word?
Kevin, I will be very honest. Yes, writing a book is not my gift. And Paul's Press, the community that I belong to, the Paul's Fathers, it's the oldest independent Catholic publishing company in the U.S. And they approached me and said, you know, you have such great answers, great content over all these years. Don't worry about writing a book. We'll just gather a lot of the answers that you've already given, and we'll, put them together. And I saw that and I go, is this how I really speak on the radio? So the challenge, the sacrifice, and the cross was writing it nicer for book form, finding a few primary sources. I didn't want to use a lot of footnotes. I wanted to make it really accessible to everyday Catholics, and for Catholics to pass on to maybe some friends or family members who aren't going to church, who wonder why we should have to go. That's what I started. The first chapter of the book is, why should we go to Mass? But I wanted to use just some basics like the Roman Missal, the Catechism, and the Scriptures, because I figured that's about all I have really handy when I'm in the studio on the air. So I'm not sitting in a theological library. So I wanted to make the book experience somewhat close to me answering questions on the radio.
Sure. So let's give people a little taste here. Father Dave Dwyer, why should we go to Mass?
I knew we'd start with that one. I really felt it important not to skip over that, and not to presume that everybody reading the book would be like, well, I'm there every single day, but what's the corner of that little piece of cloth called? Because we do get questions like that. But here we are, several years now after a global pandemic that put everybody in lockdown, and in some ways a gift of the church was having people being able to connect with their local parishes via Zoom or YouTube or whatever. But I think that definitely exacerbated people's experience of, well, it's kind of more convenient this way, and why should I actually have to go? So, I examine in the first part of the book what we consider our Sunday obligation. I do have a lot of calls from people that are either married to or dating or have friends who are Christian but not Catholic, and they go, well, sure, we go to church, but we're not obliged to. And we really look to the Scriptures and the origins of our faith, as you know, Bishop and Kevin, that God, at the very beginning of salvation history, when he first was interacting with humans, made it one of his commands that we carve out time once a week to stop doing everything else that we're doing and just acknowledge that he is God. That happened, we can see at the beginning of the Old Testament, and then Jesus told us particularly how we should do that at the Last Supper. And he said, whenever you gather, do this in memory of me. And that made that one of Jesus's commands. So we put those two together and say, once a week, we got to stop on the day that the early Christians decided, the resurrection day, Sunday, and we gather around the table and give thanks to the Lord, which is what Eucharist means, and do it because Christ commanded us to do. So it's really, the answer is unfortunately just what your mom used to say when you were 5 years old, because I said so.
Well, if people listen to your show, Father Dave, they know that you're a welcoming and encouraging presence, allowing people to ask whatever they needed to know. How did this inform what questions that you addressed in your book?
Well, what I really like about this, I've been saying on the air since we've been talking about the book release, that my name is listed on the cover, I am one of the primary authors, and the listeners are the others, because they are genuine questions, and that's not just to say, look how we did the book, but it's to say that honestly, in these years I've been hosting the show, I have had people ask me questions that I've never thought of. And that, when we celebrate Mass all the time, even from our time growing up as Catholic, we kind of take a lot of things for granted. And then some of the ones, I wouldn't even say come out of left field. I would say, actually, that's a pretty good question that I just have never thought to ask myself. So many of them were like that. We actually have in the book, as we've tabulated, our top 5 questions of all time. And they're not what you think. One of them certainly is, you might be able to guess this, because a lot of people listen to us in the car, and people who, in fact, drive for a living listen to our show. And they say, if I can't make it to Mass, does it count if I listen to Mass on the radio or watch on the YouTube? And of course we address that, and we say, well, let's talk about what count means and what a Sunday obligation is. But some of the questions I never would have thought of, like that part of the Mass when we say, Lord, I'm not worthy that you should enter under my roof, but only say the word and my soul shall be healed. I can't tell you how many times people have called in and said, this has been something that's been bugging me. What's the word? He says, say the word. I'll say it if you tell me what it is.
That's great. Well, it's good to know that not only have you written this book, but you've written it with your listeners. And how can people get a copy? Because I personally want to get a copy so I can know all the answers too.
Well, I will send you one. But everybody else, it's very easy. You can go to paulistpress.com. Just the way it sounds, Paulist doesn't have an S at the end, so I'm a Paulist father, Paulist, press, press.com, and I think it's still right there on the homepage. It gives you a little splash, welcome you to the book called Mass Class.
Perfect for the Eucharistic push, as we call it around here, or revival.
I like it.
Thanks so much, Father Dave. Always great talking to you. Take care.
Thank you, guys.
Bye. Have a good weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye.